Hey folks, I'm Troy and you're watching TroyTube. Today we're going to talk about how to build your own website from the ground up. When I say we're going to build a website from the ground up, I don't mean we're going to do all the programming and coding and customization, all the nitty-gritty work that makes a website work, but we are going to register a domain name. We're going to install a platform called WordPress. There's a lot of different ways you can build a website and a lot of different platforms you can do it on. You can do some of this for free. You can do some of it for low cost. If you want a really high traffic, high quality website, you can do that too. So it's just like programming and a lot of other things in the technical world where there's many different ways to accomplish the same thing. Which one's the right one? The right one's the one that does what you need it and does it the way you want it and works for you. And there are some solutions that are better than others, but I'm going to take you through the basics of how to set this up, how to get it online, how to customize it. We're going to build a video series on all the different types of plugins that I've used with WordPress and how you can build your own website, your own blog, your own basic e-commerce store using WooCommerce and some other things, and get you online. And you can build a blog whether you're a crafter, an artist, a mechanic, or whatever it is you want to do and promote on a website, photography, whatever you want to put out there. I'll show you how to do this, and we'll switch over to the computer and we'll get started. Okay, so now we're going to register our domain name we want our website to be identified as. And most domain names that are short, catchy names are already taken, or if they're not, they're for sale for very expensive amounts. So you're going to have to be a little creative and think through what you want to do. Typically, you want to avoid things like hyphens. You want your domain name spelled out as letters only, possibly some numbers if you can be creative with it and it not be confusing with other things. And you don't want it to be too close to certain other websites that people might get confused with and confuse your brand with something else, or mistakenly end up on a competitor website depending on what you're doing with it. And so you really want to think through this. You don't want difficult to spell words. You don't want to get too creative and spell words in funny ways, and use, it's kind of the trick of how you can spell words different ways with different letters and have it just appear unique, because it might be difficult for someone to find your website if they don't know how it's spelled. And so today we're going to register the website name TroyTube Blog. Now I'm using Namecheap, and you can do this on a variety of registrars is what they are called, and you can use GoDaddy, Domain Discover, Register.com. I prefer to use either Namecheap or Domain Discover. I think they have the easiest to use control panel without a lot of fluff. They're very simple. They're cost effective but not overboard. Be careful of a lot of registrars that may offer you a website very, very low price, like $1 for the first year or something like that, because oftentimes what they'll do is they'll raise that price the second and third years on you, and you don't have the flexibility to register your domain name with someone else and move it cost effectively by the time you realize what's happened to you. So you're going to pay $5 to $10 a year usually to register and keep up your domain name. So the first thing you have to do is type in your domain name and search for it and see if it is available. Now I am already logged in, and so I can just simply add to cart. And one of the things I highly recommend that you do, you don't need to do any of these things like hosting or anything like that. We're going to do that separately. But once you check out, you do want to add domain privacy to it. And usually the registrar, they'll usually call this domain privacy or something similar like Privacy Guard. And what that does is it protects your information from public viewing. So if someone wants to look up your information, you have to put in your name, your email address, your phone number, because they require that information to know who owns it. But if you do not add the domain privacy, you will expose your information and you will get tons and tons of spam phone calls and emails as soon as your domain name gets registered. So whatever you do, do not turn off domain privacy. Always pay for it. Now in this case, we don't need the premium DNS. That you can use that if you want, but for the purpose of what we're doing, you don't really need it at all, especially since we're going to do shared hosting where you have to set your DNS servers to another host anyway. Premium DNS lets you host your DNS with redundancy with the Namecheap. Even if you don't use the premium DNS, you can use their DNS servers too. These are domain name servers, which correlate your IP address to a name. For example, TroyTubeblog.com will eventually resolve to an IP address. So it's kind of like a phone number lookup. When you type in the name, DNS gives back the IP address and allows your browser to eventually get to the website for various functions. So you want to register, set up your free account. Setting up your account is totally free. Search for your domain name, find it, and then pay for it and check out with domain privacy, and then at that point you own your domain. Now, how long do you want to register it for? I'm only going to do 1 year just for the purposes of this video series. If you are serious, you think this is going to become a business, you're going to have this for a long time, register it for at least 3 years, maybe 5 years, because some of those things do matter when it comes to search engine rankings. But for the most part, 1 to 3 years should be fine, and I'm only going to do 1 year in this case for the video series. So you'll want to check out and buy it, pay for it, just like you would if you were shopping online and buying a product to be shipped to your home. So I'll go ahead and go through that process, and then we'll switch over to the next step. So now we have purchased our domain name, and you can see on our dashboard, you can go over here to your domain list, and it will give you a list of the domain names that you own. And of course, if you own many of them, you can search for them with certain keywords. And then you can click on Manage to get to your settings for your domain name. Now, we're not going to change anything just yet. We have to go register with our web host first, and then we'll come back here and set our name servers to whatever our web host tells us we need to set them to in order for our website to work. So now that we have our domain name registered, we're going to sign up with a web host. And there are many options for this. In this case, I'm going to give the example of A2 hosting. And if you sign up with A2 hosting, as well as buy your domain name through Namecheap, down in my video description, there's a link that is an affiliate link where it doesn't cost you any more, and I get a little bit of a commission for each purchase that goes through their websites, and just kind of help support my channel and help support what I do to try to help others. And so with A2 hosting, the most inexpensive way to host a website is through shared hosting. Shared hosting allows you to share basically space and IP addresses with other people who are running small websites on a host server without too much expense. Now, the way they cut back on the cost on that is these are virtual servers. They're not physical servers. Without getting into a lot of technical explanation, it is just a very inexpensive way for them to host your website. If you're going to run a large e-commerce site, for example, if you were planning to build a business around it and you were serious and you really want to get out there, you would want to go to more of a reseller hosting or a VPS hosting, or if you have a really big service you want to offer, then you would go to a dedicated server. Now, you'll notice that the price range varies greatly across their services they offer, and if you are just making a basic blog website, a small e-commerce site, usually shared hosting will work fine for you. If you were serious, you wanted to build an online store, you could go up to VPS hosting or a dedicated server. Don't be fooled by this price on VPS hosting, because that's a pretty small, low performance server. So if you really wanted any traffic, you're going to pay get a bit more than this. Just depending on how you build your service and what your kind of traffic you're expecting on the website. For the purposes of building a simple blog or a small e-commerce store, usually shared hosting will work fine for you. However, you'll see this as low as $2.99 a month. Most of your hosts will advertise in this format. As low as means if you prepay up front for a certain period of time, it equals $2.99 a month. So if we click on it to view the details, you'll see that this $3 a month plan is a 3-year plan. So you would be paying $108 up front for your website but then you won't pay anything monthly for 3 years by doing so. Now I'm going to do a 1-year plan, and it's going to go to $6.99 a month for the purposes of doing this video series and hosting this TroyTube blog, just to show you how to set up WordPress and get things online, and then the site will be there for reference as we go through the video series as well. So you're going to do this, and basically you're going to set it up, and you don't need to register a domain because I've already registered your domain. And I'm going to say I'm going to use my existing domain, and tell it what the domain name is that I'm going to use that. It will verify all of the options. It is unlimited transfer, unlimited email accounts, and it's pretty much ready to go. 12-month price, $6.99 for $83. And with this particular host, we can choose things like if we want host unlimited sites, we could add $2 per month. In this case, I'm only going to host one website, so I'm going to leave that alone. I can choose where I want it located. I'm just going to leave the default to Michigan. I'm not going to get a Rapid SSL. We can buy this a little bit less expensive other ways. I'm going to use the free SSL, and so we may not even need to buy one. If you wanted, you can get a dedicated IP, but in this case, I'm just going to use the shared IP services and save the money on that. And depending on what you want to do, you have options for backup, firewall, spam firewall, things like that you can pay extra for if you want to. So you can see it can add up quite quickly if you choose all of those options. But in this case, we're not going to choose any of those. We're not going to use the Easy Website Builder or the Auto Installer. We're going to do this installation for WordPress manually. A lot of times these auto installers can cause problems for you later on when it comes time to move your website to a new host and different things. So we're just going to ignore that. We're going to get the basic hosting plan for 1 year, and today we're going to pay $83.88 for that. So I'll go ahead and check out, and then we'll get logged in to the control panel and show you what that's like. Now, in order to administer our website, we're going to go to the cPanel login. So cPanel is a control panel where you're going to administer your individual web server. And when you signed up for your account, you should receive an email within a few seconds that gives you some specific settings that you need to set. Remember when I said we would come back to Namecheap and set our name servers. So they have provided the name servers that they want you to set your domain to. So we're going to go ahead and take care of that now. So I'm going to copy this first one. And if you notice, they all are the same except for they are NS1, NS2, NS3, and NS4. So we'll go back to Namecheap. And here on the name servers tab, we're going to specify custom DNS, and we're going to put in all of these name servers. We're going to put all 4 of them in: NS2, NS3, NS4, and I just copy pasted and then changed each one. We click this little check mark to save it. And then our web server, our domain settings for our web server with our registrar should be completely set up. And now we can exit out of Namecheap. But just make sure that you stay on top of paying your bill for your website, because if it ever expires, if it goes past the grace period, you will in all likelihood lose it, and you will not be able to get it back because someone else will register and own it at that time. Now that we're in Control Panel, we are going to set up WordPress in its most basic form. So the next thing we're going to do is go to wordpress.org, and right up here in the right corner is a Get WordPress button that we're going to click. And there's all kinds of suggestions here on ways you can get it, hosts that you can use, and so forth. We scroll down, we'll see a download WordPress 5.7 button. That version may change. This is the current version that's available at the time I made this video. And you'll see that it will download. It's not very big. It's about a 16 megabyte file. And now that it's finished downloading, we can close that window and go back to the cPanel. And we have a few things we're going to do here. The first thing we're going to do is create a database, and the link we're going to use is this MySQL databases, and up here at the top you can also type in search, and it will find things as you type, and we're just going to go to the MySQL databases. And as you can see, it puts a prefix in here for you already. Now I'm going to use WPDB, and that stands for WordPress database. So my full database name is going to be TroyTube_WPDB. Now I like to open Notepad and track this information. And we just simply create the database, and then we go back to the same page, and if we scroll down, you'll see that you now have a database created. And basically it just created the database, but there's nothing in it yet. And the database is where all of your content for the most part is stored in WordPress. Now down below, we're going to add a new username. Now I'll usually use a user like WP user. These are just easy names to remember. And again, we'll document that in our Notepad file. And we can click this password generator, and it will generate a password for us. And we can simply tell it to copy paste that in there. Now for you security buffs, don't get excited. I'm going to actually change this password before I make the site live in this video, so you won't be able to access my database by using the website you see, by using the password you see on the screen there. So we create the user, and it's pretty instant, just like creating the database. You can ignore that little pop-up in the top right corner of my screen. I use a password manager called LastPass that tries to save those for me. And if we scroll all the way back down to the bottom of the same thing, you'll see an option here that says add user to database, and you should see the user that you created. You should see the database you created. If you've only created one user, one database, they'll be in there by default. You click the add button. You're going to click all privileges and click make changes. And now you've created your database, created a user for your website to log into your database, and this is kind of a behind the scenes user that your web pages use to access your database. And so this is something you're going to want to keep, but you're not going to want to log in with this username and password. Your website is going to do this for you. So if we click this little grid, it'll take us back to the main page. So now that we have our database set up with proper credentials and everything, we're going to now upload the WordPress files and set up our basic website on the file system. And in cPanel, if we go to the file manager, which is usually up here at the top left, you will see that at the top of your folder structure, you'll have a /home/folder for your username. So mine is TroyTube, so my entire kind of neighborhood for my website and my files is located under /home/TroyTube on the web server. Under that, you'll see a public HTML folder. Now in that public HTML folder, on A2 hosting, there's a folder and a couple of files. On other hosts, there may be nothing or other files that are similar for placeholder pages. And we want to get rid of these any folders and files that exist in here at the present time. Assuming that there's not a folder called .wellknown, and I'll show you that in just a moment. So we'll click on the right panel and click select all, and we will delete the files and folders, and we will skip the trash and permanently delete. If there is a folder in there called .wellknown, you can leave it. If there's not one, you may want to create it later on, but we'll address that later on in a different video. So we're going to then go up here to settings on the top right corner, and we're going to turn on show hidden files. And then you'll see this file called well-known and a folder called .wellknown and a folder called .htaccess. Because these files have a period in front of them, they are hidden folders. That's why we just turned on view hidden files and folders, because we will use these later on for some different things once we get into the real customization of our website and installing a secure web certificate and so forth on the site. Now at the top level on the left, we're going to click on that, and then we're going to click the new folder button. Now in the field for the new folder name, we're going to call it uploads, and it should be in the home folder, so there should be nothing in this field below. If you were selected on one of the other folders, it may show something in here, so you want to remove that if that's the case, because we want this uploads folder created at the very top level. And when we create the folder, you'll see that it creates it alphabetically down here at the bottom, but it's at the top level of all your folder structures, which means that it's not accessible from inside your website to the public. Now we're going to upload the files for WordPress. You're going to want that WordPress file we downloaded earlier. Currently, like I said, we are on 5.7 version of WordPress. This will change as they come out with new versions of WordPress. On Windows, it's usually under your downloads folder. So in order to upload that, I'm just going to drag and drop it right up here. And usually this will take a minute or two, maybe a few seconds, depends on how fast your connection is. And then once we go back to the file manager, it may take a moment or two for it to show up in the uploads folder, so you may have to refresh or reload to see it there. So now you see the WordPress zip file in that folder. So I'm going to click on it and highlight it, and then I'm going to click the extract button, and we're just going to extract it to the /uploads folder. And you should get a box telling you that it was unzipped okay, and then you should see a folder called WordPress. So we're going to double click and go into that folder. We're going to click the very first thing and click select all. Then we're going to click copy, and we're going to copy this to the public HTML folder. It's very important that when you type in your names of your folders that you put the / in front of the name to make sure you get it into the right location. So when we hit copy files, it'll just take a split second, or it should anyway. And if we click on the public HTML folder, now you'll see your folders and files in there for your WordPress website. Now if we open a new tab and we go to our domain name, it should redirect you to the WordPress setup and configuration page, which asks you which language you want to install, and we click continue. It will tell you which information you're going to need on the next screen, so we click let's go. And now we're going to need that information that we had saved in our notepad file. So I'm going to copy paste each of these over into those 3 fields. And again, don't worry about the fact that I'm showing this password in the video. It will be changed before this video goes live. Now that I have entered in those 3 pieces of information, I'm going to leave the database host as localhost, which means this server, and then we're going to leave the table prefix defaulted as WP_. Click submit. The next screen, if everything was entered correctly, should tell you it's ready to run the installation. If you receive any errors, you either entered information wrong on the previous screen, or you may have missed a step or did something incorrectly during the database setup and user credentials steps, so you might want to go back and review those parts of the video. Next, we need to give our website a name and use assign a username for the administrator to log in. Again, I'm going to document this password temporarily, and before the website goes live, of course, it will be changed. We enter our email address, and if you wanted, you could check this box to keep search engines from indexing your site, but you really want to leave that unchecked so that part of the whole point of having a website and blog is so that search engines know how to find your content. And then we clicked Install WordPress. And this should just take a couple of seconds, and it will tell you it was successful, and then you can go log into your WordPress website. And congratulations, you have now installed WordPress. This is your basic control panel that we're going to get a lot more into detail with as far as configuring with themes, widgets, plugins, things of that nature. If I go up here, I can click on Visit Site, and it will take me to the front end of the website. And you can see it's a real bare bones basic website with Hello World and the title of my site there with just some generic content to show that it is working. So again, congratulations, you have done the basic install of a WordPress website, and in the next videos we're going to be doing some customization, installing a certificate for SSL communications, which is kind of required these days for a browser to be able to access your website cleanly. And hopefully you've learned some things and enjoyed this video. If you have any questions or comments, post them down below the comment section.